Let he who be deceived be deceived. Or, as the saying goes, the world wills itself to be deceived, so let it be deceived. And deception is oftentimes just truth hidden in plain sight. One of the reasons being because the truth can be a very difficult pill to swallow. Truth is, oftentimes uncomfortable, something that flies in the face of popular opinion. The truth is also, you know, oftentimes complex. It's not, just yes or no or as simple as it's made out to be. It's oftentimes very, very complicated. And by complex, I mean there's a lot of little mechanisms that go into it. Let's take, for instance, the war that's happening. People thought that, it's a long time that, whether you win a war or not is just simply based on, firepower and, how good your soldiers are, how skilled they are, how skilled the military is. But, truth and, well, truth is now revealing itself that it's a little bit more than that. There's popular opinion. There's the economic factor. Are you able to sustain a war economically? And that's going to play a big role in, whether the war is popular or not, because, you know, if, something is, if the war is costing the, local population a lot and there's not much to gain from it, well, it's not going to be popular. It's going to be very unpopular. As the saying goes, truth is stranger than fiction. And so I actually know someone that I know had a supplement business. I mean, they still do. But, as I've gotten to know this person and their supplement business, the guy's like super smart. I mean, he's like next level genius. He knows a lot about a lot. I mean, the guy's just beyond genius. I mean, you think of Pisces energy. This guy's like Pisces energy to the nth degree. Wow. The guy's, got some Aquarius and Gemini, and well, he's got a little bit of everything in his chart, and just like we all do. But this guy was and he still is the definition of Pisces energy. Talk about that. Well, long story short, the results proved that people care more about packaging and marketing than, the actual contents of the supplements. And, the supplements are good. I mean, the guy, he definitely knows what he's talking about, but, he just didn't package it very well. The truth is not being packaged very well, and so people didn't want to buy it. So, he did what he inevitably had to do, was to cut corners and to jack up the prices, which he did. He had to cut corners and jack up the prices. Now, while he doesn't lie about, what's in the supplements, it's not like he's telling them, oh, well, it has this, but, it doesn't actually have it. No, I mean, you know, it's amazing stuff. He had to jack up the prices so he could afford better packaging. And when I mean jack up the prices, I mean he reduced the total amount, he reduced the contents for one, and he also jacked up the prices because, well, people cared more about packaging rather than, what's actually there. And I mean, the guy had like piles of research articles, and the guy did he did research himself. He used to work, like in a research firm and all that. And when I say the guy's next level genius, he is that. He is next level genius. I mean, I think of some of the stuff that I talk about to be enlightened. Wow. So, long story short, well, the people wanted to be deceived. The people willed to be deceived by, complaining about the packaging and instead opting to pay for more expensive stuff with less content, simply because of the packaging and marketing. And so they did. So he followed suit and he decided, well, if that's what they will for themselves, and, then they're going to be deceived. And I know part of it has to do with fear and trust. It's like, are you going to trust, companies selling supplements that you're putting into your body for health if, the packaging looks kind of off? I mean, I get it. It's a legitimate concern, but it doesn't change the fact that they were brutally deceived. And so deceived they were, and deceiving he did. Now, mind you, he still does, but I'm not here to give him a plug. Another example of deception is, think of politics. I mean, there's so many things that point to, a lot of our politicians, especially the ones that get more, notoriety, as being puppets. As someone that has, dealt with narcissists and has also dealt with, let's just say some very different people, I know what's going on under the surface. You know, I know what was running through Donald Trump's mind, before and after some shots were taken at him. You know, I'm not trying to brag, but I've been in near death situations where, it definitely put things into perspective. I wasn't directly shot at the head like that, but, I've definitely had some close calls. And let me tell you, if you have any bright ideas prior to, having a near death situation, that situation can definitely give you, at least a reassessment of your good ideas, which, that does explain a lot of his flip flopping. My channel, I don't really put a lot of, effort into trying to make this channel look fancy or to do a lot of marketing on this channel. Well, for one, is because if I get money from this channel, I'm okay, but I'm also okay if I don't. I've learned to be detached. And the other reason is, because I do genuinely believe that whoever is meant to find the stuff will find it. And which is also why I don't really put out a lot of stuff that's, meant to be super triggering or polarizing. Even like I was, years ago years ago, I did some other stuff on YouTube, and I'm not gonna, I'll be honest, I just put out a lot of stuff for shock value. But, the point of this video and what we're talking about here is, you know, we're just gonna have to let some people fall through the cracks. And look, I'm someone that has gone out of my way to try to save people. I've gone out of my way to try to convince people. In fact, part of how I learned how to talk the way that I do on this channel and talking about the way that I talk about. And, also, you know, what got me into this is having to convince people of stuff and trying to save people. And, you know, I know how these manipulative dynamics work because I myself have been involved in such manipulative dynamics. And for those of you that have notice how I do avoid referring to myself as a victim of these dynamics. Because while I was on the receiving end of some things, I learned how to take what I was on the receiving end of and use it to my advantage. Just as the mercury dissolves the gold and turns it into an amalgamation, dissolving the gold and lead and making it into the Philosopher's Stone. So have I in my previous life learned how to take what other people have said in the situations that I've been and use them to my advantage. And I say my previous life and my previous situation because there were definitely some times where it could have been the end of me, but well, let's just say I have a lot of water in my chart and some very, very strong water placements. In fact, I have Jupiter in Scorpio in the 8th house. That's like Jupiter and Scorpio in the house of Scorpio. It is what it is. And I have, well, my sun sign is Cancer, so there's that. I'm not gonna give away my entire chart, but there's a there's a bit going on in there. So that'll be about it for now. We'll catch each other soon, and my best wishes and blessings to all of you during this time of turmoil. Whether you are an ally or an enemy of the United States. No matter where you are, we all have our reasons for what we do, and that is why I give my best blessings and, care to everyone out there. So there you go. That's it. Take care.